We are live. Just what?
You took the list. Can you sign
actually, there.
real quick? Milo for last comment.
We
Sorry.
are live.
It was a little premature. I still have half
Just a
second.
reminder to everybody. Hello, can I get everybody's attention? We're live. We're live. Yes, we are live. Thank you. This was the quiet side. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Apologize. We're a couple minutes late. Want to make sure everybody's here. Still missing Mr. Krause. All right. Welcome, everybody. Today, Tuesday, November 15th, 2021. I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is the Pennridge Community Committee. I'd like to thank everyone for sharing this time this evening with us as we embark on a journey. Sometimes the journey may be smooth, other times it may be a bit bumpy. I appreciate everyone at home via the live stream, all those in person, in attendance, and those willing to be up on stage with myself. It's to have some difficult conversations with a community that needs some healing. I'm going to share some guidelines of what we decided as a committee for some rules, and I'd kind of like everybody to adhere to those. There's 7 of them. There was actually 8, but one pertained really to the committees. One is respect. So we're going to respect each other as we're up here, ourselves and each other. Civility. We're going to be civil. Listening versus hearing. Hearing, you hear words. Listening, you're actively paying attention to the conversation, not one-off. And when I say that, actually now I think about it, these lives are hot. So if you have any little sidebar conversations, they'll get picked up, they'll be live streamed. But as I think they adjust and as we'll go, the conversation should be easy, just normal conversation as you're speaking. Number 4, there are no stupid questions. Sounds funny, but there are no stupid questions because if you have a question and a concern, ask. Stick to the topic. That keeps us on track. One person speaking at a time. That goes back up to the respect thing. And keep an open mind. Those are some of the guidelines we came up with as a committee, and we're going to adhere to those, so I'm going to ask the community to do so as well. Let's see. We'll start with public comment. I'm going to read, according to policy number 903, public comment, which is limited to 3 minutes, should be directed to the presiding officer rather than individual board members, district employees, or members of the public. The confidentiality and privacy rights, specific comments regarding particular individuals must be communicated privately to the school board and superintendent via email at psdschoolboard@pennridge.org. And we have Lauren Boosh. And the question, when you come up, your name, there's a podium up here, your name, the municipality, and the topic.
I'm not sure if you're calling me. Did you say Laura Foster?
Oh, yes.
Okay, that's me.
And you have the topic as vernacular. So which item number is that?
It's a set agenda.
I'm sorry, what?
I didn't see any agenda.
You didn't see any agenda items?
No, I didn't.
So for the first comment session, it does have to be per the agenda items.
What are the agenda items?
They were public as of Friday.
Okay, well, it says it just in reference to the words of DEI then. About the title of your committee.
So that is actually, I'm going to actually ask you to speak at the end then.
I hate to be a pain about this, but unfortunately I can't stay to the end. Is it possible for me to speak now?
Actually, no, that's protocol.
That's protocol?
Yeah.
Okay.
I will keep you on the list. I have you right here.
I know, I can't say that, so thank you.
Karen Downer. Is it Karen Downer? There we are. And your topic is diversity.
Yes. Yes.
Was again.
Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes, I'm back. So there is nothing on the agenda that.
I noticed that I was looking at the agenda and trying to see where
Yeah,
I
so the first part of
fit
the meeting
in.
is where we actually address the agenda items. So I'm going to ask you as well to wait till the end if that's possible.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
Do you know if like some of these are part of the mission statement component, if people,
I think that's going to be part of the conversation once we. David Badillion? Your topic is mission statement?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the discussion's gonna be, but I just wanted to kind of touch on.
Actually, I can address that. Everybody up here has written a mission statement, and they're all going to read their mission statements, and we're going to have the topic of conversation about the mission statement. My job for the next month, I'll just tell everybody, I'm going to collaborate all those, and we're going to create, and I think it's called that's why it was on my list. It was basically a collaborative effort for.
Can I save mine for the end then?
You absolutely may. Thank you. Paul Daniels?
I'll defer to the end as well.
Thank you. Well, this is easy so far. Kim Badillion?
Oh, I'm at the end, right? That was an agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry. I should have read. My apologies. I'm going down the list. Liz is at the end. Carolyn Spirano? Serino? My apologies.
Hello, my name is Carolyn Shreenum. I'm from Hilltown Township. When the school board voted to halt the district's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Initiative in committee, along with all diversity materials across the district, it did so in response to public pressure that the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee had been created and developed hidden from the public. There were cries that the members of the committee had been handpicked, that there was not sufficient diversity of thought, and there was not sufficient community buy-in. I ask you, how was this ad hoc committee formed any different? The ad hoc was formed not by making a call out to the entire community, something the board could have done just as it did with an email pushing the mask exemption. Instead, it was created by appointing members of the board to handpick individuals who would sit on the committee, and not surprisingly, many of the individuals chosen had already been outspoken about their strong position against diversity, equity, and inclusion, or anything that resembled it. Again, how is this any different than the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee and diversity efforts that were halted? What was the process by which the individuals were chosen to be in this committee? And will the community be provided the complete list of all the individuals considered but not appointed, along with the criteria used to determine who would be appointed to the committee and the information considered for each individual who requested to be appointed? I am hopeful you will provide responses to these questions during tonight's meeting, or in the very least, provide me with the courtesy of an email response. In addition, I received the 2021-2022 RAM report and was disappointed in the first paragraph of Mr. Krause, the president's letter, because especially after their halt of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee and initiative, it was nothing further from the truth. However, moving forward with the school year, I hold you all and the board to Mr. Krause's words. Mr. Krause's words being, the Pennridge School Board is committed to providing a safe and supportive learning environment for all students and staff in the Pennridge School District. Our goal is to meet the individual needs of all students and prepare them to be well-rounded, lifelong learners with the skills necessary to succeed on any path they choose. Each school board member is dedicated to their role in assessing new initiatives with the best educational interest of the kids, how to provide staff with the tools and training necessary to carry it out. I ask you all to please take Mr. Krause's words and work together towards that. I was told this year that we were not allowed to showcase a wonderful picture because it demonstrated cultural diversity. Is that really the school district we want to be? A school district that bans cultural diversity? We used to be able to show cultural diversity, and now it feels like we're going backwards instead of forwards. I'm asking that you all have open minds and hearts and really keep all of Pennridge students and families in mind when making your decisions. Thank you.
And next up we have Jean Kramer, no topic. Adrian King, diversity. So as well. Adrian will bump that to the end. And Mila Morris, no topic, so we'll bump that to the end. That is all we have for public comment this evening. As far as mission statements, I asked everybody in the meeting to create mission statements. As we are here, I'm going to start on one side. We'll just work our way down and just read the mission statements that we created. So that way we can put a name to a face and a mission statement. Ms. Manis-Clemens, would you like to start?
Sure. Provide a well-rounded and inclusive education that celebrates, values, and meets the individual needs of all students, enabling them to be successful, think for themselves, and reach their full potential in any path they choose for the future.
To provide community-driven recommendations to the school board that will enable our children to arrive at adulthood being well-rounded and prepared for the real world.
I believe that when people feel respected and included, they can be more creative and successful through planning inclusive lessons and curriculum that reflects the backgrounds of all students, regardless of color, beliefs, or sexual orientation. I hope we will educate students who will transform the world into a better place.
Excuse me. The Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Ad Hoc Committee will be vested in the gathering, examination, and application of data to explore the benefits of DEI as it pertains to the Pennridge School District. This will allow the Ad Hoc Committee to be in direct partnership with students, parents, teachers, and administrators. Therefore, we shall be committed to be in the right relationship with all our partners.
The mission statement of Pennridge Community Committee is to be a bridge between the members of the school board, parents, students, teachers, and the community. We at PCC are committed to address all issues that affect all members of our community to ensure that their voices are heard and treated with dignity and respect.
The PSD, or Pennridge School District Community Committee, is a diverse group of community members that bring differing perspectives to the table in order to vet, advise, and make recommendations to the school board. Our goal is to examine, discuss, and make consensus recommendations on highly controversial topics, initiatives, and curriculum that are believed to have a strong impact on our students. Using factual data, the committee will strive to evaluate the needs of the students in our district to determine which programs curriculum would benefit our students and advise or recommend accordingly.
Okay. I prepared a statement to read before I read the mission statement. Do you mind if I read that? Okay. So it's addressed to my fellow Pennridge Community Committee members. This committee was created during a school board meeting where the district's DEI initiative was halted indefinitely. The formation of this committee was precipitated by community concerns with respect to the DEI initiative. Thus, this committee ought to handle DEI-related issues either solely or primarily, possessing untempered jurisdiction over the entire initiative, existing for as long as the Pennridge DEI initiative exists. In my view, this committee should be regarded as the DEI Implementation and Oversight Committee, but I don't mind that it's not named as such. I mind that it functions as such effective immediately. This committee mission statement must articulate a clear purpose and explicitly define values that the committee will champion. Should also include provisions that equip the committee with specific jurisdiction so that the committee can set out to meet confidently all of the controversies. For example, the mission statement should explicitly recognize an untampered domain for the committee over the entire DEI initiative and probably should define diversity, equity, and inclusion. We must swiftly assign purpose and revolution to this committee. I'd specifically like to see a mission statement tethered to the district's DEI initiative. However, I'm open to compromising on anything that's broad in scope, so long as Pennridge DEI remains our primary concern. And then I didn't get the brevity memo, I'm sorry guys. This is my committee mission statement here. I chunked it into 3 articles. The first would be the name. The name of this committee shall be the Pennridge Community Committee. Article 2 would be about defining diversity, equity, and inclusion. So this committee and the members which comprise it share an unwavering commitment to the values of diversity, equality, equity. We could decide between those 2 words, and inclusion. The missions of this committee are to A, enlighten Pennridge faculty and students to those values, and B, recommend to the Pennridge School Board ways in which the district can be ordered in accordance with those values. The values would be defined as we would decide. Article 3 would be the domain of our committee. In order to advance the committee's mission statement, this committee shall be the premier body which handles all DEI-related issues. It shall possess untampered jurisdiction over the entire Pennridge DEI initiative. It shall exist for the duration of time that a DEI initiative exists at the high school. At the entire Pennridge School District.
I should have spent more time on my homework because
My apologies. Yeah.
I can't trump that, but mine would be to build a community that values, respects, and listens to the unique experiences, perspectives, and viewpoints of all the members of our community, no matter their race, gender, ethnicity, or socioeconomic level. Most important, to empower and help our students reach their full potential based on love and respect, by embracing not just what makes us the same, but what makes us different. In turn, help build a connection that will make the Pennridge community more united and stronger.
Thank you.
Okay. So my mission statement answers 4 questions. It is, what is the broad corporate philosophy of the committee? How are we going to achieve our goals? What are the desired outcomes? And why do we even want to do this? Or why are we even doing this? So the mission statement is as follows. We recognize that thoughtful and empathetic students are critical to cultivating and sustaining a unified and resilient community. Our mission is to improve the scholarship and development of our district's students using fact-finding, analysis, collaboration, and consensus in order to foster diversity of expression, equity of opportunity to succeed, and inclusion of all regardless of our differences.
What you said. Okay. The mission of the Pennridge School District Community Committee is to investigate, discuss, and collaboratively work in an open and transparent manner towards recommendations for the school board's consideration on the topic of diverse, equitable, and inclusive practices in our schools. Attention to previous work completed and the views of Pennridge School District stakeholders, students, parents, teachers, administrators, and community members alike is essential. Recommendations should also support the existing district mission statement.
Thank you. My mission statement. It is our job as parents and leaders to teach our students how to treat each other with respect and dignity. Not everyone is the same. They may look different, they may speak differently, they may wear different clothes. If we can only look past their superficial markers and just share a smile, ask how their day is going, reach out and be a friend, but most of all, a true friend. At the end of each of their journeys, we want each student to think back fondly and remember that their time at Pennridge with friends was good. Every student should feel appreciated, loved, and most of all, ready for the world they are about to which embark. Life is good, so be kind to one another.
So I align my mission statement with the Pennridge Comprehensive Plan, and our district comprehensive plan strategy number 2 says that the district will provide social emotional learning safety nets, and then it further explains that and says that it will help students build social skills, understand and appreciate diversity, have acceptance of all, and analyze data for continuous improvement. This is my mission statement. The Pennridge Community Committee believes that students learn best in an educational environment in which every member of the school community feels accepted, included, and valued. Through research and education, the committee will strengthen and support district initiatives that foster an understanding and appreciation of diverse cultures and identities. The committee will be dedicated to ensuring that all students are provided with equitable opportunities to achieve their potential in an environment that embraces a culture of inclusion and prepares students to become productive members of a diverse global society.
Thank you.
So I prepared a vision and a mission statement. One of the things I do want to note, as I refer to the Pennridge School District community as one of parents, the ecosystem of a parent, teacher, administrator, community member. So I just want people to understand that as I'm reading this. So my vision, with a collaborative approach, the Pennridge Community Committee seeks to advance the district's initiatives of ensuring an inclusive and equitable learning community through educating the whole child. The mission statement is to build and nurture a culture in the Pennridge School District community that develops an understanding of each person's uniqueness by recognizing and valuing diversity and individual differences. Work to advance equity throughout the Pennridge School District community so that all students are provided with the opportunities, access, resource, and support in order to grow academically and socially to achieve their current and future potential. Ensure that everyone is uniquely valued, respected, and appreciated for their social identity being their race, ethnicity, gender identity expression, ability status, religion and cultural beliefs, nationality, socioeconomic status, and sexual orientation as valued members of the Pennridge School District community. Thank you.
My mission statement is to promote and foster an educational environment that is committed to the equality of opportunity, discrimination-free, and unbiased. The establishment and the deployment of programs, initiatives, and services that provide the students, staff, and administration with the skills, tools, and materials that support this objective.
Thank you.
My mission statement is, our goal is to create and maintain a welcoming and inclusive school climate that promotes learning. This committee will work together and with the community administration to identify and remove barriers, promote awareness, understanding, kindness, and respect, and be a trusted source of knowledge regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion. We believe that authentic learning opportunities will respectfully acknowledge the value of the diverse cultures, lifestyles, experiences, perspectives, and identities of our students.
We want to empower future leaders who will be allies for racial equality, value different backgrounds, and celebrate unique customs, traditions, and perspectives of individuals of different genders, religions, socioeconomic statuses, sexual orientations, ethnicities, abilities, and ages. We should strive to create an intentional learning environment of equity and inclusion for our students and staff to participate, prosper, benefit, and reach their full potential. We aim to be culturally responsive where every child and adult feels valued and can be heard. Our commitment to these values should be unwavering, recognizing that diversity is power. Thank you.
I'll read my mission statement. I wanted to align with the district comprehensive plan as well. In the current 2019 to 2022 district plan, there are 3 goals identified. One of them, goal number 3, very similar to 2, is provide social emotional learning safety nets, help students build social skills, understand and appreciate diversity, have acceptance of all, and analyze data for continuous improvement. With that in mind, the Pennridge Community Committee exists to support the Pennridge School District in reaching their stated goals in the district comprehensive plan. To do this, the committee will advise or recommend the Pennridge School District and its board on the assessment of current and future data points intended to guide concerns and goals identified in the current comprehensive plan. Based on the needs identified, the committee will advise or recommend solutions for the identified needs. The committee will also suggest or recommend potential methods for evaluation of solutions and define indicators of success. Thank you.
Hi. The Pennridge Community Committee supports the students within the district by gaining an understanding of student needs or gaps in diversity, equity, and inclusion space at Pennridge. This committee then facilitates the activities to create an atmosphere at Pennridge where all students feel valued and seen. Each activity will be implemented with all students in mind and how best to pave a path to greatness for each, keeping at the forefront of each activity the understanding learned by listening to all students.
In response to school district diversity-related programs, policies, and resources, this committee will provide concise and thoughtful reflection and feedback representing the different perspectives of our community. The feedback will be based in fact, data, and current research. More specifically, this committee will review SEL curriculums and programs of other school districts and will present options to this school board and district.
The mission of the Pennridge Community Committee is to recommend actions to the board regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion based on the committee's assessment of needs, and evaluation of existing and potential new resources.
All right, first, let me apologize. As I was coming in, one of my children had an emergency and managed to hurt himself at wrestling. That's why I was a little late getting up to the stage. My mission statement, I just did a very broad, simple one. I wrote, "We love our community and its people. We endeavor to be a group that celebrates each other's unique gifts, traditions, and successes, and supports each other in times of need in such a way that not only fosters a sense of belonging for all Pennridge residents, but broadcasts a welcoming signal to those who'd like to join us here."
I don't know what everybody else thinks, but I thought there was a lot of great ideas out there. Now to collaborate that and put that into I'll spend a couple hours on that, but I appreciate everybody's time. Any comments, open comments in regards to the mission statements? Please.
Well, I mean, once everything is collaborated, will we be voting for, as a committee, to approve those?
Yes.
We get copies of what everyone just
Absolutely.
said.
I wanted everybody to actually say it out loud and publicize it before. Yes. Sorry
So
if
then
I'm looking back and forth feeling it.
Will we in the next, like, what's the next step then? So we'll read everyone's, how will we collaborate in the next meeting?
Yes, the goal is to have all the listed mission statements, all the details of all the mission statements to collaborate. I'm trying to think of what it was called. It's like a big diagram that has all the words, the most used words, all that. Kind of what we did in one of the retreats with Mr. Krause.
Another question is, recognizing that we're not probably the only community that has this type of committee, are we looking to benchmark to see what other communities or community organizations like this or community committees like this that have done to kind of complete their mission statement?
That, I believe, is going to be in that next, in the next comment. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't look this way.
I'm wondering, just to make it easier, if maybe we should build a structure like a belief statement, and then maybe like why we're doing this and what we're doing it, what we're doing, and then pull those pieces together, so that we're not kind of just putting pieces of a puzzle together and trying to jigsaw without knowing the direction.
I don't know if I missed it, but next meeting is when we're hashing out the mission statement.
Correct.
Okay. I don't know if everybody else is having a hard time hearing, so it seems like we're missing
sorry if
something
you
there.
Oh, really?
Everybody too, okay.
I'm sorry.
We can't hear them.
Oh, you can't? And probably if I'm talking this way. Especially me? I'm sorry. I'll vocalize. I'll be a little bit louder.
I couldn't hear what Brian just said.
Nick, what did you just say?
Nick, sorry. Nick, sorry.
No, so that was my question. So next meeting,
December 20th, yes.
we're all gonna come to an agreement. I guess I'm curious about the process as well.
Yes.
I understand what you're saying. We're gonna have common words up there, but then we're all gonna try to do this like this and say we like one sentence or 5 sentences.
Correct.
Okay, fair. Thank you.
I will come back to this side. I'm sorry. I'm not ignoring it. Yes. Anybody get anything?
I didn't hear anything. It is hard to hear on this side of the mic.
Yeah.
Quite an echo.
This is like the mega Last Supper. This table's huge.
At our other meetings, we were across from each other and we could actually hear.
I think that when you're speaking, you just have to project your voice, which
will
I
project.
usually don't have a problem with, but.
I have done that once in a while. I do have older kids.
Dave,
that-
pretend you're on the baseball field.
my older kids will attest to that, yes.
Can you compile, since everybody sent you those mission statements, can you compile those all in one document? Because
that is the plan.
for me,
Yeah.
listening, I need to see it.
Absolutely, yes, I agree.
I would love to see that, yeah.
Yes.
I think there's a lot of commonality already.
I heard a lot of it, so
statements,
yes,
which is
that's why I was
really
asking
positive.
for the data, so I can actually just look at it, list it, and kind of go from there.
You might actually find that there are some very common sentiments, if you will,
The
phrases
foundation.
or whatever, that everybody agrees on.
Absolutely.
And is so important to them, right? It's basically their interpretation of what we're here for.
Yes. I believe that creates a foundation of where we have a commonality and we start with a common goal. It's kind of like what I use is if you're building a bridge, you start with a foundation. You have two islands and you're building a bridge. You build the piers and the footers and the foundation before you can actually get across to the other island.
Right.
I mean, and that would be our common goals and common terms of where we can agree on to start with, and that's where we grow.
I mean, another thing that we could do is just another option as far as picking our way through them is to have them displayed on some large boards.
Correct.
You know, large enough for everybody to gather around them.
It will be up there, yes.
Well, I was thinking actually, if we were going to do this in person, we could. Having it on a big screen is kind of hard to put highlights on, or to put a star next to, or to put a circle around.
Gotcha.
So if we had them on big boards and we were able to say, you know, that one's phrase right there, that really resonates with me. And that phrase over there, that resonates with me as well. And if you've got one phrase that everybody's putting a star next to, or everybody's highlighting, or everybody's, I don't know, underlining, that may be another way to crack this nut. Just an option.
Absolutely. I like that. Thank you.
But we definitely, I mean, having it up on the screen isn't
That is
something
really
that
good
we
for
can
actually
manually
visibility, yes.
do. Okay. So actually, so if they had it up on the screen and everybody had their own paper copy, we could do that on our own with our, okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'm slow, but I'm fast.
Oh, it's all good. It's all good. Anybody else? It's hard to see everybody. Archie's kind of like, I see you. Are we good?
Yeah, I'd just like to offer a word of appreciation for everybody taking the time to put these statements together. I think it just speaks volumes of everyone's commitment to making this work, so just wanted to offer that.
Thank you. I think that's a consensus. I believe everybody spent their time and effort because of the belief in this committee, so I appreciate that as well. I mean, there's 22 of us, 21 of us up here today, so. Survey and data gathering, as we move on to number 3. Surveys, data gathering. So we have old data that we had on the website that we have on PTA, PTO, HSA websites. We can gather data. We can collect data. We can go through the data.
I have no idea what you just said.
Is there a single microphone even?
Right there, and if I speak that way, is it better?
Microphones are picking up for the public, but
That's probably better.
we
Yeah.
don't have one that. Oh.
So I'm going to be the feedback guy. Everybody on the line is going to be screaming. Thank you.
We're not passing that around.
No. Is that better? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
It's better.
You can hear me now? All right. This gives me, this reminds me of a couple years ago at a Pennridge Little League opening day ceremony. I had Tommy Green standing next to me, and the cordless microphone went out, and we got the second cordless microphone. That did not work either. We had to go to a corded mic. So it's a reminder. All right. Data gathering, surveys. We have old data that we had prior on websites, HSA websites, district websites, collecting, gathering, going back through all the data that was there because the data is not valid. There is data that we can actually, can everybody still hear me? Even though I'm turning my head. That is possible that we can talk about, have conversations about, and I think the data is important. I know, I think it's important to go over to see what is good, what we can agree on, what we, have decisions and, to make surveys out to the public. What kind of surveys do we want to present to the public? What kind of comments, what kind of questions do we want to ask to the public about our committee? How do we want to move forward from there?
Please.
I would also ask, like, what is it that we're trying to gather data on?
Right.
Like,
Well-
because, yeah.
I was going to say we have other data that was unchecked from the website, if you will, that was on websites. We still have some on HSA and PTO websites, if I'm not mistaken.
What kinds of data?
Diversity.
So
Parent questionnaires, like what is it?
Parent and kid questionnaires. I guess those would be the.
I guess I'm confused, like,
Yeah.
what,
Is the data?
yeah,
I don't know. That's what I'm saying, to actually digest and to actually go through the data that was actually out there.
So I think there's a couple of things. I would probably recommend that whatever's on the websites, whatever's on our Pennridge websites, that's more of the informational work that was done completely,
Okay.
right? I think there is a separate part that we do. I think where you were going, Ms. Corn, was to understand what data we have currently within Pennridge. I know there's different organizations that have provided data to Pennridge. Pennridge has their own data. Maybe we can see those before we need to go to a survey point. Just assessing the data and work that has been completed. I think those are two separate items. But we need to evaluate the information that we have.
Correct.
To understand the steps going forward.
Just to clarify, was this data from the previous DEI committee, or where did it come from?
Yes, I believe that was what we're talking about. So all the data that was involved, so all the past data, so we can actually digest it, go through it.
So so we're trying to build a repository of things that we currently have.
Correct.
Who will take the repository data, the information that we have, I got that. Data that maybe the administration, teachers have, I think that's something separate.
Correct.
And that's part, and then the other piece is benchmarking against other communities. I guess that's to me.
I don't think I wasn't looking for a benchmark necessarily there. I was just collecting and gathering the data was my comment, so we could have the discussion on the data that would be needed. So the district data that was.
But I guess what I'm asking is, if you benchmark against neighboring school districts and their committees,
Correct.
right, you would understand, and after you take a repository of the information that you have, you would understand the gaps that you have here. And then that would help you understand where you need to go.
But I think every community is different. I don't think that looking at other communities would help, because I think that this community is very unique from other communities. I mean, you're not going to compare us to other ones. I mean, I think it should be something that we do centralized here first, and then from there see how the students and the parents feel. Because if we go out to other communities, there's differences in socioeconomic levels, ethnicities, there's different variables that just wouldn't be allowable for us to make the right decisions at this point.
So let me repeat what I'm saying, because I hear what you're saying, that's not what I said. What I'm saying is that taking a look at what the other school districts are doing, not saying that we're going to go there, just taking a benchmark of what they have.
They might have some good ideas.
Not saying that we're going to go there, it's literally looking at what they have, what we have, to see if there's any gaps and if we want to address them. That's what I'm saying.
So I just want to put this out there because I know I mentioned this at the retreat, but I want to talk about this because we are talking about data. And I think when we're talking about something so personalized as data related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, we can't rely on surveys only. That doesn't paint the whole picture and give us a true perspective of all of the community members here in our district. So I think data is important, but I think we just have to be very careful about what we do with that data and make sure that we are not 100% relying on data that might not represent everyone here.
That is a broad term. I would say it's a broad term, please.
I was going to ask for qualification here. I'm thinking of this from a simple business perspective. Data is statistical numbers.
Correct.
Okay? There's a difference between data and content. So if you're going to look at what was previously done,
Content.
it's primarily content. We don't actually have, and I haven't seen yet, any statistical data. So if there's data, I would love to get my hands on it because all I've seen so far is content.
Please.
I think what Aaliyah, I think, is saying, I agree, that before you look at other school districts and what they are doing, what is it that we are trying to do? We need to define that. People are saying DEI, but you know, from our conversations that we had at previous meetings, that's not actually the agreed upon mission of the committee to do that. So before we go out and look, I think we need to actually define what it is that we believe Pennridge needs, because we can't identify deficiencies in us by looking at other school districts, because they might be doing something completely different from what we want to do. So that's, I would rather us take all the mission statements and have that discussion and come up with what the mission of the committee is before you go out to look at the way other people are doing things.
Districts to be like, all right, your problems are our problems. No one's saying that. What we're saying though is that other school districts have been working on this for much longer than we
But what
have.
is this, is my question.
On just evaluating DEI.
So
I think DEI was pretty
there's a
prominent
really
in all
good
the mission
saying
statements.
that's, if you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And what I mean by that is, we don't even know what our nail is,
Yeah.
Rick. You know what I mean?
I agree.
Yeah, we can't even decide on what the E stands for, because a lot of us aren't happy with the equity. A lot of us want the equity. We need to figure out first what this committee wants to do in that regard.
So
because
what are the needs?
Exactly, what are the needs first? What the community feels, because maybe the community feels like equity isn't the route we should take. Equality should be something.
Yeah,
That's
but when
something
we
as a
say
community
that,
we have to
say we
decide.
need data, right? Like when we've said, let's talk about what we are, you're like, we need to collect data first.
Mm-hmm.
And your
No,
hands
I'm
are
not saying that at all, to collect data. I'm saying define what
What
it
the problem
is
is.
that this committee.
We can't come up with a
is going
medication
to
without
try to
the
do.
ailments. Like, we have to see what the
You
ailments are.
just got up here, and I've heard, as you said, there's 21 people up here. I would say the better part of the 21 people mentioned the word diversity somewhere in their mission statement.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So that sounds like we have a focus. That sounds like we have a purpose. So again, and going back to your point, I get if you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. But what I'm trying to say is that we can learn. Again, we're starting today. This is November 15th. You have school districts that have been doing this for upwards of 10, 15 years. You have other school districts that have started maybe 5 years ago. We're here. All I'm saying is not recreate the wheel. I'm not saying go, thank you, Ms. Rashford, for kind of helping me out there. No one's saying go and take their template and make it fit here. That's not what I'm saying. Back to what Ms. Harding said. We have a collection of resource of content. That's one thing. We do not have any data. We will need data. Benchmarking is, as we go to shape our mission, vision, our work to be done, let's take a broad look across Southeast Pennsylvania, Bucks, and you just want to say Bucks and the local school district, look across. Most of those school districts are similar in demographics. They are. This area, they're not Philadelphia.
I think so.
They're not
But
Philadelphia.
that's what we should see. We should see first if they are, because you're not going to compare. Like, if I came from Miami-Dade County Public School District when I was, a teacher, it was all Hispanic. We're not going to compare what they do there for diversity that you would do here in Pennridge even, because I think even if you go to Doylestown, there's a lot of differences, even socioeconomically, from what we have here. So I think it's important to see first what we have here before we start looking. First, we need to look at our house and not look at our neighbor's backyard. Let's start at our house. That's the important thing.
At the same time, I think that there is value.
There is value, but I think this should be, we should do it in steps. You can't start a house by the roof. We have to start foundation.
So that means district-wide surveys before we go to look to other school districts. That's what that means?
Well, there is, I think what he's saying is we already have maybe some like
There's old
other
content. There's old
data
content.
and surveys
There's old content.
that Pennridge has
And
done
let's look at that
already,
first,
and
though.
we need to look at that and
First.
see what we have already and what is pertinent,
Right,
what
I mean,
kind of
that's-
content is
We need
in
to see
there.
the value.
It seems
And
like a
then
go-to.
look
Yeah,
and
just
see
start there first, I
where,
think,
does
then
this
go on.
indicate where
I hear a lot
our
of
needs
swirl.
are?
I hear a lot of swirl, which is this great dialogue, great conversation, and thank you all sharing. Going back to, I guess, my original point, we need a repository of what we have.
Yeah, that's what he's saying, though. That's what Dave was saying.
So we would start there first.
Yeah,
We
start
would
there
do
first.
district-wide, sort of surveys.
He's
to
saying that we
figure
already
that out.
have
He has
some
that already.
We,
look at
we
what
have
we
some
have.
data and content. I gotta
Yeah,
send
there you
some
go.
of
He
the
has
content
that. That's what we
we
need to
have
look at
actually
first.
So I
district-wide.
think it might also be helpful to look at, since we're living in the realm of education, the Pennsylvania Department of Education has a mission statement on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So does the Pennsylvania School Board Association, which guides our school board as well. And I think that it would be helpful to look at those because those should be guiding us. We are here to do what's in the best interest of our students. And we may not all agree on what that may be, but ultimately, it's not just about what this parent wants or what this parent wants in the community. It's about us taking a look at our students in our community and what each and every child needs in the community and making sure that we are providing that. And so there are a lot of opinions we know here. That's
21.
That's a fact, right? Not just here, but within the community. But ultimately, all of our decisions should be based on what we believe is in the best interest of our kids. So.
Another fact is there, in addition to like the curriculum or the objectives coming down from the Department of Ed, there's also the school counseling curriculum, developmental guidance curriculum, and that includes all of the concepts that I said at one of the retreats that we had. Never was diversity ever a hot topic. I mean, diversity and empathy and good citizenship, all of those have been around for the 20 years I've been in this school district. And I've been teaching this to children for all of those years, K-6 and K-5. And I know that the School Counseling Association has objectives and goals that they have to reach through their guidance programs in middle school and high school. So I don't know when you say about collecting data, I'm just trying to understand what are we collecting data on, because there are these other organizations that as a school district we are teaching in line with. So I'm not really sure I understand what we'll be collecting
I think the
data on.
goal of, when I said data, was data collection as far as what is localized to Pennridge School District. That
But
data.
what do you mean though? Like what kind of data?
Existing data of what is content, of what is out there that we have district-wide.
What our curriculums are?
Everything.
I
So-
feel that it's
So, yeah, but
disingenuous, though,
I'm trying
that
to
they keep
understand
mentioning
specifics.
diversity being an issue. I don't think diversity is an issue. I don't have an issue with diversity. I'm pretty diverse. I think nobody here that opposes this has an issue with diversity. I think the issue is with the divisive ideas that are being pushed. And I think that we have to be very careful in uniting the community and not dividing it. And that's what I'm worried about with some of the initiatives that are being pushed. And I think that's
we
what's
have to be
happening.
careful in that sense. I don't think that the community really has a true sense of what exactly is being taught. There is this misconception that there are things that are being taught that are not, or maybe they think that they're being taught to a different level. Like, for example, I'll bring up critical race theory, which is a college curriculum, a graduate school curriculum. It is not a part of any K-12 curriculum. And I think those misconceptions are what are dividing us, not the idea of diversity.
I would just like to let the record show that idea that critical race theory is not being taught here in Pennridge School District. There's a book, White Fragility, written by Robin DiAngelo, that's a major work of a critical race theory apologist. I have a copy of an assignment where that was used at our high school in an English class.
Can you tell us what course, was that an elective course?
This was a mandatory English class for juniors.
So if I'm
sorry,
not
for
mistaken,
sophomores.
if I'm not mistaken,
I have a copy of the assignment.
in the other room, if I'm not mistaken, in the other room, the superintendent sat on a stage similar to this and actually acknowledged that there was something that was taught, right? Acknowledged there was something that was taught. It was addressed with the individual teacher. But he also got up here and stated, I mean, I'll have to go back and look and search for the meaning, but it was stated that critical race theory is not being taught. That was a one-off issue that was handled, and so that is something that, so again, Let's be based in
I
fact.
agree.
No, but I think
So
that
that
it's
sounds
important
like-
that there's other students experiencing things that aren't speaking up, because I know for a fact there are students that are experiencing situations in which the critical theory isn't being taught per se, but ideals that go along with it are being implemented, and that's a problem. I have a problem with
Here's a
that.
copy of the assignment. I have it here. This is the reading that
Okay,
was
we're
put in the
off topic
Just one
right
second.
now. We were talking about data and surveys.
Hold
There are
on,
a
can I
couple
just
of people
interject
who
for
wanna-
1 second? Guys, I really appreciate how passionate everybody is in the audience, but we already can barely hear what they're saying, and when people clap, I really, like, we're just sitting here, we're like, we still have no idea what they're saying on this
You
end.
can't hear me? Can you hear me
I know.
better? Can you hear me now?
What?
Can you hear me now?
We can pass around the microphone.
Even when you're talking into the mic, we can barely
Really?
hear you.
It is hard to hear on this side of the microphone.
Would it be appropriate to take a recess to figure out the microphones, or should we just continue to go like this and just talk louder?
I can speak louder.
There you go.
Is that better?
Yes.
I feel like I'm yelling.
And get it
That's
right
okay.
up to your
And I'm gonna put it right up here. This sounds like this is just like opening day with Tommy Green standing next to me. Got a tall, big dude. Like,
So let's get back to topic and listen
Back on
to
topic.
the people who are taking their turn.
I just wanted to go back to the, PDE and PSBA, yes, they have statements, but with all due respect, PSBA is where that education equity policy was written by PSBA attorneys. And that policy would have codified, whatever the word is, discrimination into our practices here in the school district. So, to be honest, I wouldn't be looking at the PDE and PSBA as being the authorities on what we should be doing here. I think that's the whole purpose of what we're trying to discuss, is how we need to, as Ms. Garrison said, people don't have a problem with incorporating different viewpoints and cultures and different people into a community. The problem really has become the way that it's being implemented and the very problematic ways that they are introducing these ideas to students. And not to beat a dead horse, but it has already been well established that those tenets have been incorporated into classrooms, even here in Pennridge. So I would just appreciate if we could stop, putting that forth, that we don't have it here. We actually do, and that's really the whole reason why we're needing to do this.
I totally
think
agree.
we can examine that, right? We can examine that and take a look at that. I think that's an important component. Let's figure out how much truth there is to that and what's happening. Our curriculum does have to align with the Pennsylvania Department of Education. We have standards for curriculum in Pennsylvania, and we have national standards as well that teachers are bound to teach. And so
But if a standard is discriminatory, I'm not going to be under any obligation to adhere to it.
Could you please
If
give me-
it discriminates against, for example, in that education equity policy, which I shared at the last, retreat meeting that we had, whatever you want to call it, that policy would have required the school district to do every single thing that we do, from hiring to professional development, curriculum, and discipline of the students, would have to be viewed through the prism, basically, of race. That you would have to consider the person's, yes, I know that's upsetting, and that's why
that's data.
it's something. No, not data. No, it
If
was
you had
literally
data that
looking at-
shows
no.
disciplinary action or proportionally higher in like one group of kids, whether it's race or gender or whatever, that's data.
No,
And that's
not-
identifying
but
an
that's-
issue.
With all due respect, I read the policy, that's not what it was putting forth.
All right, then
It would require people a teacher, for example, to consider a child's race in how you would approach a situation with a child, and that's just not something that we can sign on to. That is discrimination.
Discrimination
To look
how?
at a child,
Who's it
to
discriminating
look at a
against?
child and look at what he looks like to determine how you're going to deal with it.
how he looks. It's not about how a person looks.
Well,
It's the
that's
opposite
exactly
of
what the
discrimination.
policy.
It's evaluating your own bias
You need
and
to-
ensuring
You should
that
read
you're
the policy because
being-
all
that's
right,
not what
I'll reel it
it's
back.
about.
I'll reel it back
Point of
in.
order, can we get back to the agenda?
There we go. You mean the
data?
Yeah, the data.
Data.
Could someone please tell me, just provide us the data sources we're gonna get? or how we want to handle that and how we would communicate that and share that with the public.
Actually, that was my question to you all. What kind of data do we want to gather, collect besides the data that is from the district?
Well, what kind of
Well, what
will
data does
help
the
us?
district have? Like, is it like right on the website?
The
where we-
website and whatever else they have. So
So we should probably request that information if we have to, so that we can all look at it and see what is pertinent, what things that stand out to us, through looking at that data, and then determine what data we might want to gather.
Just the data we have are opinion surveys, or are they demographic surveys of like what we have racially in the school? What do we have?
that's what the surveys that was an open-ended, basically, idea.
So it's a demographic survey?
Well,
But we have
We have
content.
we should
We
have
have
a
content.
We have the
Content that we
demographics.
can look at to help
Correct.
us define some of the
Correct.
things that we have to discuss.
So who is the
We all
belly
have to be on
button?
the same page about some of these words we're using in order to discuss them as a group. Was I
Definitions?
speaking loud enough?
I didn't hear
Could you
anything you
repeat
said.
that one more
Everybody
time?
else was talking
Definitions?
louder though, I can hear it, yeah.
I'm sorry, I
I
was
can hear you
saying
just fine,
that,
Megan.
that whatever content we have now, if we're going to review it, we need to be looking at what we can use out of it to help us move forward.
Yeah.
So as a committee, we need to be able to define the words that we're using.
I'm confused about the nature of the data that we have.
I haven't
Are
seen
they
it, so-
opinionated
Yeah.
surveys? Are we asking what the
I don't know all the
community
data.
thinks
That's
about-
what
We don't know, that's why we need.
we don't know. That's why we want to gather the data.
Who
gather
are
that.
we gonna ask? What belly button are we gonna push for
I
that
don't know.
information?
We have to push.
The administration. I'm going to follow the administration around until I get the data. guys.
We're talking over each other, and I think we're all saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Right? We have content that was previously developed.
Correct.
Content.
Content meaning,
Content meaning,
Surveys.
no, that surveys are data.
Actually, that's probably the next item.
Is what was on the previous website, what were on other subsequent websites, materials, that's content. Right now, we need data. That was one of the things, again, that I mentioned during our first and second retreats, that we need data.
Correct.
We need data from the administration, whatever we can get that's not, that kind of shows us something, because again, even the content that we have, I would not feel comfortable moving forward with the content without having some data to understand where we should put the content at. So I think there's separate buckets. There's content, there's data which I don't think we have or hasn't been presented. Whether we get it locally from here or we get it from the various organizations that Ms. Berger mentioned, but again, I think that's what we need to we need to have that information. Which I don't think we have today. So I think we're all saying the same thing. I just want to put us back on topic because we were kind of going back.
We got side road? Derailed there? Yes.
May I ask a clarifying question? So we're talking about data. We haven't fully decided on the mission statement yet, and until we decide on the mission statement and have that defined, we cannot define what data that we need to either look at or collect for the future. So I know we don't have to make motions or we're not voting on things now, but I would just encourage us to maybe table the data discussion until we have the mission statement defined, and then start to look at the sources and what gaps we have. And I think, Mr. King, that might have been your point. If we are looking at the data and we're like, gosh, this just says something's missing here, what have other districts used? Maybe they would have some ideas. I think that would be a good path to move forward potentially.
I do agree completely with that, but I do want to see if we can get any specificity on what data exists, because somebody here should know, and we're talking a lot about a lot of data exists, and I didn't hear when content changed the data, so I don't really understand that piece of it, but I mean, the only thing I've heard is PAYS reports. I've heard community surveys thrown out, but I don't know if they exist. Does anybody up here know if they exist?
I don't think so.
Do surveys exist, Megan? Do you know?
I don't believe so.
There's the when he's talking about the PAYS survey, we do have that data. I don't know that data is as specific as what everybody's looking for.
PAYS is That's the data that's relative, that everybody has available.
That's like the
Correct.
climate survey.
What's the pathway to find out what data we have?
Yeah.
Like, do we talk to
Is there a
Bolton?
person?
Yeah, I was gonna go to the administration, yes.
Okay.
And you will do that?
That's why I want, what do we want?
I think that's a good idea.
Before we look at the data, that we develop that mission statement and we define those words that we've been talking about, so that we're looking at it from the same lens
Collective.
and maybe approach that.
A collective approach?
Yeah.
I think that it would be wise to start finding out what data we have, so that when
That's
we do
kinda
have
why-
the mission
yeah, that's kinda
statement,
where
we
I was
don't
going.
have
I
to
kinda-
go to that step to try to
I
find
threw it on
it.
his first meeting, but I really wanted to start gathering the data, so if we publicly acknowledge,
Yeah.
I
Not
start
that we
collecting
have
the
to,
data.
we don't have to
We don't
start
have
to
to define
digest it
anything.
or put it all together or
Correct. It's
anything,
just
just,
gathering what we have available district-wide
Yeah.
and what we
and
want
if
to
we
talk about.
decide we don't need it for whatever reason, or it doesn't align with our values, then okay,
Take it
no
and
harm,
put
no
it, or we
foul.
can take it and hold on to it, so yes.
I just wanted to set the expectation. I don't think there's a lot of data, and I think we all know that.
I believe so. I believe you're correct. I don't believe there is a lot
I
of
think
data.
that's why we're,
It's the page
I think that's
report.
what brought us here, right? Is that data isn't available, so we need to identify what data we're looking for, and then
No, I just
a
thought
method to
that-
collect it.
If I understood you correctly, I just want to stop at like the existing data. We're talking about what's scrubbing websites, making these requests. We got to get some things done here. And if there's not a lot of data, and we all should know, and I believe there's two people here that probably should know more about what data. Mr. King, I have heard you since July talking about more data, so I understand completely what you're saying. But we've also dug into what data exists, and I don't think it exists, so
Again, I've been on record by saying that we need data.
I'm 100% with you.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I've never acknowledged that, I've never stated that we have this abundance of data that we kind of tripped over. No, right now, I don't believe there's enough data, we need that.
Are there any community surveys?
So there's a part of the committee that I was on that was dissolved. We did not do any, again, I kind of covered that track. We did not reach out to the community for any type of survey. So under the previous Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, we did none of that. So again, that was one of the things that we identified, that we need that to move forward. So there were no surveys that were done. So again, that's why I'm confused when I saw data gathering. It's like we don't have it. What I think we need, going back to, we're going to use the right words. We have to be really responsible with that. We have content. We can review content. It would be great to have a repository of content. It would also be great to have a repository of what data does exist, so that we can see what we have, if it does exist. I don't know. But we've never been presented any data.
And if we don't have that data, then it'll be pretty obvious to us, at least I hope, as a committee, where those gaps are, right? And
we should be able to
if we
collect.
need to collect more information from teachers, or from the students, or from the parents, or all of the above, then we'll be able to
Have
do
more
that then.
have surveys.
Do we know what kind of data for sure we need?
No, because we don't have a mission statement.
We don't have a mission. There's no mission.
So why are we talking about data at all?
We're just
Because
we're
they wanna
talking
have an
about it
ability
because
to-
Brainstorming.
we know
Brainstorming.
it's going to be something that we're going to need, and we know that there has got to be something out there like the PAYS survey. So let's just find out what the school district has available. We can work on the mission statement next meeting.
We can
define
multitask.
that, and then we can look at then we can move from there. And we already know what we already have, so we can start evaluating that according to our
Correct.
mission
No,
statement.
a question I have about the data too, and I'm gonna say it now because I forget things. For students that are Hispanic or that don't, non-English speakers in the district, is there like a way where there's a community liaison or something that helps them be able to turn in the appropriate data? Because I know a lot of the times, like, they may be scared of turning something in because of their status, or Sometimes they just don't, there's a language gap
More
or
anonymously.
something.
So you're talking about if we were going to survey, for
Yeah.
example, those parents or those community members who might have
I think that, because I mean, there are students, I'm sure, in here that,
So I do, I think Ms. Herring wants to go, but I do agree, I think that's something that we can
I just-
consider.
I
don't-
know-
don't
but I
think
know
we
that's
should-
further
we should
along, but
move
I
to
just
solve right
realized
now,
that.
because we're trying to solve. I don't think we should move to solve, but I agree with you. I think that is a very valid point. I think that was even one we raised in the other committee regarding that, either the anonymity or just fear. So, but again, I think we should probably get back on track, but I know Ms. Herring wanted to.
Can I make a recommendation?
Please.
Okay. We all keep asking each other about data and what we do have, what we don't have. Can I suggest that instead, we were all tonight given a pennridge.org email address?
Correct.
We can all collectively email each other.
Correct.
Might I suggest that people leave here this evening and go home and think about what data they would like to have, so we can compile a collective list, okay? And ask administration if any of this is available. While we are all moving forward to define a mission statement, we can give them an opportunity to collect anything that any of us might want to see, if it does exist or whatnot, and that way we're working both sides at the same time. So at the next meeting, we actually have something that if they do have anything, they can supply it to us.
Correct.
And we can apply that against the mission statement that we create.
So as a clarification question, when I think data, I think something that's measurable, and I'm just wondering what people are thinking as far as what we're measuring, like what are some of, I hear a lot of people saying data, and I'm just wondering what kind of data everyone's looking for.
I think that's part of the.
I think that's part of the scope.
Is that because I can't necessarily decide what I want to see. I can take a lot of guesses, but I can't decide for sure until I know what our collective mission statement is and our collective objective, because that will build, to me, that builds more than about what I want to see, what I want to look at.
That builds a game plan.
I don't think it hurts to start collecting things that the district should,
Well, the
I shouldn't say
community-
should, but most likely has done on SEL. What the district maybe has collected already from the district, from the community. We'll also be able to see the gaps when we
Yeah, the
have
need.
that. So
Because
I
we-
think those
yeah.
things can happen simultaneously, but we can't really move on it until we're all
Well, we
collectively
don't
in
want to
agreement
focus on
about a
one
mission.
thing, and then we're killing each other over one topic, when maybe the community needs to focus in on something else. Like, we're saying this, maybe the community really doesn't need the help in that area. Maybe it's something else that the community needs the help in. And that's
We don't
important
know
with
that
the
yet.
number, and that's the thing,
Right.
that's why it's
Right.
important to have that data, because we're not gonna know. If we just go with what the national narrative is, we have to do this, we're not, Pennridge is different. It's not gonna be the same as other districts.
I think we have to be careful because we had talked earlier about making sure everyone's voice is heard, and some of those voices remain quiet despite surveys, despite collecting data. And so I don't think that we can necessarily rely just on that data to make those decisions. I think there is a need in general, an ongoing need for diversity, equity, and inclusion discussions in all communities, not just Pennridge, and that's something that probably will never end. So I heard just about everyone here talk about diversity tonight, which makes me think that, you know, we're all community members here, that we're thinking that that's a need ourselves, and should be a goal of this committee.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the last, I don't know if I heard the last couple seconds.
I was just saying that we're all community members here. We all gave a mission statement that revolved around diversity, just about all of us, almost all of us, which shows that we all perceive that there's some kind of need within our district, just based on what I heard here tonight.
I would maybe challenge that. I'm not saying I disagree, but that's kind of how we all came together, was based on the former DEI committee team, so I think it might be, I don't know. I don't know if I would read that much into it, that we all think diversity, that we have a big issue with diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm not saying we don't, I'm not saying we do, but I just wouldn't read too much in it. It's kind of the task we were given tonight, just to be fair.
So I think
It's not
when
an
you say
issue
we
with it.
have an issue with diversity, equity, and inclusion, I don't know if that language, with all due respect, frames it correctly. I think we have to listen to the stories of our students, and I know as a parent, I for one, have heard story after story, week after week from my own children about horrific things that are being said to other children across the district. I mean, it's painful to listen to. I know my own children have experienced it themselves at a really horrific level. And so those voices might be small, but they're part of our community. And if we're not paying attention to them, that's a problem.
Yeah, I think that that's definitely something that we should focus on. It's not just about the parents and the community, it's about, you know, the school district is a geographic district, and everybody in it has a stake in the outcome, right? Because our kids live in the district, we live in the district, and work in the district, and at one point or another, we're gonna be in the district, you know, relating to each other and dealing with each other, and, you know, children are just as much a part of that. And there are future adults, right? So they definitely should be included in this.
And I will say that some children are fearful of speaking up. I know, you know, I don't want to speak about my children in public, but I will say this for the good of the community. But my kids were literally scared to speak up about some of the experiences they had for fear of retaliation in this district. And so you're going to have voices that are silenced for that reason alone, and that's why I think we have to be really, really careful when we say that we're just going to collect data, because that data might not be representative of the people who are struggling.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and it's not just about data and numbers. I've heard a lot of people say it's those open-ended questions, right? That just let people express themselves and you know, tell us what you think about the fill in the blank. Tell us what you feel the need for fill in the blank. So letting people talk and not just give numbers, that's going to be just as valuable as the statistics, right?
So Mr. Wright, let's have a quick, I mean, because I want to kind of get us on the agenda, and through the agenda, but a couple of just the thoughts. Again, everybody, a lot of great dialogue, a lot of passion. Love hearing everybody's engagement and involvement, so I'm glad we're all here. I think we have the right people. My question is going to be a couple of things. Is, again, going back to, I guess, Ms. Herring gave up a proposal around, you know, all of us getting, you know, our emails and coordinating, but is there a way that this committee can be provided a repository of what resources the previous DEI committee had, what diversity current ones exist, where, and I think that's going into the next one, content,
Yes.
like content,
Yes.
what content we have. The other piece that when we talk about data and surveys, I'm in sales and marketing. My former role was market research, so I understand market research. But I heard we have teachers up here, we have other people, and everybody has great professionals. Is there a way for us, I know we have corporate sponsors, I believe Penn Community is a sponsor of Pennridge. I believe we have some other sponsors. Is there a way that we could potentially leverage them to assist us through this journey? Because again, we have a lot of parents, we have a lot of administrators, we have a lot of people that this isn't their day job. Our day jobs are our day jobs, right? Or our night jobs. Again, being inclusive here. Some people work the night shift, so this is not their primary role. So is it possible that we could lean on some of those corporate partners to help us through this journey? Because again, we don't know what we don't know. I've never built a house before, so the first time, what I'm gonna do is, I wanna talk to somebody who's built a house. Then I'm gonna go to a hardware store, I'm gonna ask somebody at Home Depot, which type of plywood I should buy, right? I don't know those things, but I know I want to build a house. So I think we all want to build a nice house. Is it a way that we could work with somebody that could help us through this?
Yeah, I mean, another idea, in addition to that, that's a great idea, is just asking other sources, people who represent, for example, the religious community, all the different religious leaders in the community, or all of the different, yeah, that was just one idea, but yeah.
Now, do you mean actual businesses, or are you heading towards, like, I know that there was a few districts that had issues with getting somebody like, a DEI person? Because I think that would be a big issue for a lot of the
No,
people
I'm saying,
here.
so Pennridge partners, if I'm not mistaken, I mean, there's Grandview, I believe, sponsors
Okay.
the football, right? Sponsor. You have I think Penn Community is a sponsor as well.
Okay.
I'm saying reach out to those organizations that we are currently partnering with. Let them know what we are embarking on and ask them for assistance to help, not to do the work for us, to make sure that, like, make sure that we stay on track.
How does a bank help us though in this?
The bank has the diversity, they have an HR department which has probably a committee that has done some type of employee engagement. You have the Grandview that also has an HR department that's probably done some employee engagement.
Okay, so my concern with involving outside
Yeah.
corporations, I think that might be fine once you define your mission and define what it is you're looking for, rather than going to these outside organizations that might have that singular perspective that really was the downfall of the entire initiative. That's kind of another reason why we ended up in this place, because there was a conclusion about what the district needed without doing this background work, and things sort of were, marching along without us assessing what it is we're setting out to do. So before we would go out and ask people to help us do something, or even to gather information, I would want to know what we're looking to do.
So again, I'm not stating that to go get the information for us.
No, I know that you said that you don't want them to do the work.
I'm going back to restate what I said, because I don't think you heard it.
I heard you.
What I said was, is for people that we're currently partnering with. We're starting our journey. Again, we're day one. It's November 15th. You've had other organizations and people that have been doing this a lot longer than us.
But what is
I just don't think a
We don't
corporate
have the this
entity
that
should
we're
be
doing.
involved at this
Well-
point. I mean, that's just me.
Well, hold on,
I think we should just-
hold on. The lady, I'm sorry, the lady next to you, she actually made a good suggestion. If everybody were to throw out their ideas and then, as far as using our email addresses. So for example, if you were interested in learning what kind of data was out on the website, if I was interested in maybe collecting information from religious organizations, maybe you're interested in collecting information from the children, or so everybody's going to have these different ideas of where good data is coming from.
Yeah. I think we should leave it at that.
Just
Okay,
leave it
yeah.
at that. We
Because
could
going
do
to
So we
that.
follow the
DEI
breadcrumbs is what you're saying?
for a
So we follow the
corporation, I
breadcrumbs
just
of
don't think
whatever
that's a
he's
good,
bringing
yeah.
to the plate. So we-
I mean, I don't know, that's just me. I don't think,
Again, I just don't, that's not what I'm saying is.
to go to a corporation
is
and
to
ask them to
help
give us the DEI person, because they already have DEI stuff
No,
there.
I don't think that's what Dante was saying. I think what he was meaning is that they're like big corporations, like St. Luke's. They do employee satisfaction surveys.
No,
and
he wants like the
that
DEI
kind of
committee
thing.
from there.
No, I don't
Was it
think
what
that's
did
what he
he
meant.
do you
I think
specify?
just
So
we're
thank
how
you
to
for
gather
trying to
information.
paraphrase for me. That's not what I'm saying. And I'll let it go just because it's really not that important right now for me to kind of try to explain myself.
But you had
over again.
mentioned going to like the banks, like Penn, and they have a DEI
What
community
I'm saying
partner.
is that right now is that we're 21 people with our own perspectives, our own experiences, and maybe our own motives for being here. And motive's not a bad thing, but meaning reason to be here. All I'm saying is that, I don't do this for a living. You don't do this for a living. He doesn't do this for a living. We don't do what we're up here doing for a living. We're talking about crafting a mission statement. How many people in their day job, I think there was only one person or two people that said they've actually crafted a mission statement in their day job on this panel. So what I'm trying to say is that some of the qualifications, that some of the jobs to be done, we don't all have the qualifications, and that's not a problem. What I'm saying is that maybe we could have somebody help us shape the mission statement. We have all these ideas. You have somebody that's their job to help shape the mission.
But I think you're jumping because what happens is right now this is something of a committee. They didn't ask the guy from Penn United or whatever bank to come into this committee. They may not have a horse in this race. They may not have children in the district be part of the community. They might be somebody that they're coming from like Scranton or something. This is something that we should start off, I think you're jumping, we should start baby steps. The mission statement as a community, this is what we were chosen for. And then go on to the data, and then baby steps.
I thought you were talking about collecting data, actually.
I don't think that Mr. King is referring specifically to the information pertaining to a community. I think he's looking for expertise.
To have somebody come in and do that, yeah, no,
Not to do the work, but to just tell us, like, here's what you should do to craft the mission statement. This is step 1, this is step 2, am I saying that correctly?
We're good. I think that's complicating things.
I mean,
So I think-
among 21 people, if we don't have a good mission statement,
Yeah.
shame on us.
Yeah.
So I think the goal moving forward, and I'll just say this to keep us back on track, there's a distribution list that includes everybody with their new email addresses. I will send out a list, or will send out an email to the distribution list, which includes everybody. Reply back with your ideas of goals, data, or not goals, data, content that you'd like to see. And then I will relay that to the administration and track down that information, if that is fine for the next meeting. Is that okay?
Yes.
Is everybody?
But just a reminder, there can't be discussion by email.
No deliberation, yes. There's no deliberation, just question, answer. Yes, I'll send a question. No back and forth. Yes. Sorry, had to clarify that.
What is the question or the questions that we're trying to answer with the data? Like, what is the reason for the data?
Collection of data. Of what
What's the
kind?
reason for the collection of, like, what are we answering? What questions are we answering? What are we trying to
What
get?
are the needs
That's the
of
mission
the
statement.
community?
Huh?
What are the needs of the school district, the students, the community?
But I guess I mean more specifically, because since we are the diversity, we're talking about diversity, so what are we trying to answer with the data? Are we
Maybe
trying to
how
ask, do
people
we have?
feel, if they feel like, I mean, the whole goal of the DEI was to see how their diversity was acknowledged and included and whatever else that.
So we're
they
trying
felt.
to understand if our students feel acknowledged, included, safe. That's what we're trying to.
I mean, I guess that's so if DEI was trying to say, and we need to say, is this what we really need? Or does the kids need to, like, you know, have a parent home at night?
Well, here's
that
what's
they're
so
supervised?
confusing to me. Like, for years, like, this has been something that is already developed. Like, I'm so confused. This is like a part of developmental, like, this is like all a part of the whole guidance program. This is all a part of.
But it's
school
obviously not
character,
working
positive
because
school
she's
There's
saying
abuse.
that
She's saying that there's
being-
abuse of the kids in the school, so obviously something's happening in the
Something's
guidance
not working.
program.
If her
that's not
child
happening.
is being abused or like
Yeah.
called names or because of their race or ethnicity or religion or whatever it is, that
There's
it's not
something
working.
wrong. There's something not
Whatever
happening.
you're doing is not working.
Yeah.
So we need to figure out what needs to work.
I want to pause there because I don't think we can pinpoint that on one department or on one person or on one teacher. That's a district responsibility.
Well,
and I
yeah,
think
it's
that's
what they're doing
That's
that's
what
not
we're
working.
doing. So I just thank
Well,
you
and
for
there are
doing
just
what
so
you do
many
because
multiple factors that come in with that, and there's so many different structures within our school district that respond to students not feeling included or students not having the things that they need so that their education isn't equitable to someone else's. There's all kinds of different structures for that, but what I'm trying to understand is with our data, of course we have students that don't feel included. Of course we have students that don't feel safe. There are going to be those students. So I guess what I'm trying to understand is what are we trying to get at with this data? Because there's going to be those students.
Okay,
That's
to
like
see
a-
what
that's-
students and what is the deficiency, because, you know, we could sit here and be like, okay, all the Hispanic students in this district feel unincluded for some reason. When in reality, maybe it is the children that are maybe white, that are low socioeconomic, that don't have a mother or father to help them with their homework, or they live with their grandmother. I mean, these are things we need to look at, not just say because the nation is saying we have to do this, what is happening in Pennridge, and I think that's the bottom line.
So I think think what's fabulous about DEI is that it's for all students. It's not just for one group of students.
Okay, and that's good. That's
when you're
good.
Addressing,
That's
you're
good.
addressing socioeconomic background,
Yes.
race,
But it's
culture,
not what
religion,
we've been
gender
hearing though, so that's
identity.
my concern.
So when we talk about DEI, we're talking about everybody. What
Okay.
can we do to make our entire community, each student in our district, feel welcome, accepted, valued, included, safe, respected? And so I think it's really important to define that we're not saying that we are looking for data that one specific group, because it may not be a specific group. In one school, there may be different kids who are being targeted, for example, than in another school. I don't know if that kind of data is really going to give us a true picture, but we do know, I think we can all agree that there are children in our district across all levels, K to 12, who don't feel safe, don't feel respected, don't feel valued, and it's hard for them to go to school each day, and no child should feel that way. No child should feel that way.
Well, can I, from my perspective and all the years that I've been on the school board, back when Dr. Radigan was our superintendent, is when we started the SEL, which is social and emotional learning. That's when we started this. And it started out with the goals of making children feel safe, welcome, included, all of those things that you just mentioned. Where I think our society has gone off the rails is where we have started to introduce these other ideas of not just trying to make sure that each child is feeling welcomed and included and safe. It's that there's these other pressures now being imposed on all kids, saying, well, maybe you have a part in why this person doesn't feel included. Maybe you're you have to think about what role your position in life might have played in this person not feeling it. That's where, if you want to point to why something's not working, that's why I think it's not working. Because if you look back at where it started and you follow it to where we now are, and the way that we're talking to children and the things that we're teaching them, there's your problem. Because we're dividing them instead of focusing on doing what Joan Cullen needs to be successful. We are taking Joan Cullen's problems and we're trying to define them through other people. That's where I think the problem is.
We need to celebrate our differences, and I think what this comes down to, again, is education, which is why we're all here, right? So kids need to be educated, and what you're saying, Joan, I can't really speak to, because honestly, my kids' experiences might be different than your kids and everyone else's here in the classroom. So your kids may have experienced that particular, method of teaching, whereas my kids, I know, haven't. So I don't want to take away from what you're saying. But with that being said, we need to start with a new foundation. How can we educate our students to recognize and acknowledge that there are differences and that we're all unique and that every child still deserves to be respected and celebrated for who they are, no matter what that looks like.
That's what I'm trying to say, is that's what we were doing. We had, as we've all established, we had a goal of diversity in the last comprehensive plan. That's not something that anybody's ever shied away from. And we've had social and emotional learning, which encompasses all of these things that you're talking about. The thing that is different now, that we didn't have then, is the way that we are now having children look at the world and at themselves. We're having them place a lot of stuff outside of themselves instead of placing it inside of themselves. And we're having them focus on how people react to them instead of having them, realize that they can be successful in life regardless of how other people.
I do think how people react to them does have an impact, especially,
they shouldn't be mistreated, but you shouldn't look for validation from other people.
I don't think it's just validation, it's discrimination. There's outright discrimination that's occurring, and that's a whole different topic.
But if this is happening, shouldn't that be at the building level? My son had an issue a few days ago where something happened that a child did something that was inappropriate and not good. And the building administrator took care of it right away, and it stopped. Now, your sons had issues, they came to you. The problem is then, how is the administration's handling? Because we can sit here and say, this kid, we do this, or that, but maybe the kid that it's happening to, you're saying they're scared to speak up. Well, then why are we not placing these safeguards in place for students that they're able to go to an administrator?
I hear
Because the
what you're
administrator,
saying, but I hear, it's not just my boys. They come home every single week. I'm not exaggerating.
okay, but isn't
Talking
that something you
about,
should be fixing then? Because you mentioned it last time.
I listened to you. Can I just finish, please? So, my boys come home, and every single week they tell me about kids who were harassed or discriminated against. I mean,
Okay, what did you do?
I've heard appalling
But
things.
did you go to the administrators and say,
So I
this is what's
can't
happening? But if you go to an administrator, because
So I have
I've had
gone to-
situations like that, and I've gone to administrators.
So I have, but that's not enough is what I'm saying. It's not just about discipline, it's about education as well. So you need the two in conjunction with each other. One on its own is not gonna do
But do you
enough.
think that by teaching a child the book White Fragility?
But wait a minute,
I'm
we're
not
getting,
saying- I never said that. I didn't say that.
getting to solutions.
We can't solve problems if we don't have,
If I may, if we get back to some of the.
You're going back to the topic, Joan?
information we already have, what Ms. Conley was saying, if there was in our previous comprehension plan, which I have to admit, I don't know what the previous one was, had a diversity
it did,
component, then there would have been data that had to be reported to the state.
correct.
So that's something we can look at
Yes.
and build from there. I mean, I think we need to get back to where, because I agree, all these other issues are just very important, and we are going to get to them for sure, but we need to do the first things here. We don't, but we have to look at it. I mean, that comprehensive plan should have some information for us.
And that's one
Start
of the
looking
pieces
at.
of data that is important to collect, right? And that was going back.
The
Yeah.
guidance
So
What do
department.
we want to see?
What do we want to see?
What do we want to find out?
And the
right?
guidance department across the district most likely fed
Great
a lot
source.
of information into that last
Perfect.
comprehension plan, and quite possibly right now are probably collecting on the current comprehensive
So
plan.
these are all the
that's what we
details
have
that we want to
do.
gather so we can know where the sources were when we go and collect it.
Right, and then know what.
Can I chime in here for a second? I feel like there's two parallel missions, right?
There's two sides to me, and I just keep going back and forth.
So one is celebrating and valuing all different cultures. Kids relate to people who look like them, who as role models, right? And so some of that is having finding ways where we have different heroes that they're reading about, that like an Asian American child can see someone who looks like them, who's a hero, who accomplished something, making sure that the resources are diverse and they can see themselves in some of those, in some of those stories and things that they're, experiencing with their education. That's not necessarily data driven. No one's going to say, hey, I didn't read a book about this, right? So I feel like that's one aspect of it, is figuring out how we can celebrate and include all different cultures so that everyone feels like, they are valued for their individual characteristics, right? And the other piece, I think, is some of the problems that people are identifying and trying to figure out what the magnitude of those problems is and try to quantify it and figure out if there are solutions to those problems. So I see the data pieces for part of it and not for the other part. And I think that's why there's a little bit of confusion, because I think people are trying to lump it all together, and there's not going to be data that says how much you had some piece of literature that promoted, someone like you. And just to come up with some examples of ways that I see people being included, like when my daughter was in elementary school, my 17-year-old, when she was in elementary school, and they were getting ready to do the talent show, she was trying to figure out what she wanted to do for the talent show, and there was a little boy that she would go down and help in his class at the end of the day, and he had an hearing impairment. And she came home and she said, Mom, you know, it's really not fair that when he goes to this talent show, he can't enjoy the talent show because he can't hear any of the performances because, you know, of his disability. And so she decided that for the talent show, she was going to do Fireworks by Katy Perry and do it in sign language, which actually looks really neat when you watch it. I came in, and the way it was set up in the room, the parents were behind the kids in the cafeteria. It just so happened, coincidentally, I happened to be sitting right behind that little boy. To see his face and how excited he was, and he was doing it along with her, and how much it meant to that little boy to have been included in that. You know, I feel like that's why we're here. I feel like that's our mission, is to make sure that everyone has those moments. And fast forward to on Veterans Day, we were over at North, and the chorus that was performing for the veterans, and I'm sure many of them have hearing impairment as well. You know, I mean, we had someone there who was a World War II veteran. And the chorus was doing the songs, and they were doing it along with the sign language. And so to me, you know, that brought me right back to that situation in the elementary school, and how there's things that we can do to make sure that kids feel more included, and how those things can make a big difference. So I feel like we're kind of losing sight of the mission, which is finding ways that we all agree with to include students and make students feel welcome. And I think, you know, we kind of keep getting lost in the weeds.
Without the mission statement? Without the mission statement?
So, what I think I hear everybody saying, you're going to send the information from before so that everybody has it, so everybody can review through it. You're going to send everybody all of the mission statements that everybody brought together, and everybody can start to look through those and on their own think about what makes sense to maybe combine, right? You're going to look at what data is available. People are going to share what pieces they think they need data collected on, right? So we can compile that. And so that brings us to school buildings, classrooms, and district-owned websites.
There you go. We got
Well done.
Maybe you should share. All right. Anybody with a comment? Please. Number 4.
I mean, what about school buildings?
There has been concerns before about school buildings, classrooms, district-owned websites. This is all collaborative of what we were just discussing. We kind of went, I guess I just hear it now. I can hear it better now if I'm closer to the mic. Sorry, that was my fault.
In terms of number 4 in particular,
Yes.
there has been a vast differential across this district in terms of content and location, with multiple entities having access and control. Some is district-based, some is PTO, homeschool association based. I would like to ask if we can get the administration to please streamline it, because we have a tremendous disparity between the content that is visible to one elementary school versus another. And I'm finding that a very disturbing situation. You cannot have one elementary school have a host of resources and have a homeschool association that is embedded in the district's website, while 3 other elementary schools have no such resource. We need to, we're talking about discrimination, we're talking about all these other words, but yet we are our own worst enemy, because we have a disparity between one building to the next, and that needs to end. So I'd like to see administration get a hold of that immediately. Whether it's take it all down until it all goes back up, but there needs to be consistency, and we don't have it. We are still an educational institution. We have to treat every child exactly the same. We don't have that consistency today.
I think that was actually the point of this, is so that all of the information would be funneled through one committee to make
Correct.
sure that there is consistency and to
That
make
is
sure that
correct.
the content
We want symmetry across the board.
is-
Elementary schools are all the same.
is approved.
So
Middle
part
schools.
of our mission would be to monitor this.
It seems
So-
well, go back to the
So it
mission
seems like,
statement.
I think the idea was that all of the proposals in those areas would come through this committee, so that this
That is
committee
correct.
would vet and discuss those things before they went out on websites to make sure that there is consistency in approved content.
Correct.
So is it possible to get, again, a repository of the content that is at each school building, I guess at each building, websites, things of that nature? Is it possible to get that repository?
The district-owned or affiliated websites we can. The HSA or the PTOs, the district does not own, so we would have to work with those partners to collect that
So
information.
whatever we can, I guess, all I'm saying is when we, and maybe huddle back up next month, kind of, each of us have, hopefully electronically, I don't want to.
It'll be electronic, yes.
But
not paper.
have a repository of the content that we have, and all the everything that we have. I think we've all been asking for that. So again, it's a repository of what each school has, what they don't have. That way we can see and make recommendations once we have our mission statement. Put
Yes.
rules in place to actually kind of govern that.
Yes. So this was kind of this was kind of like a multitask project agenda, so we could actually, multitask. Since I know all of us can do that, we can, eat and chew gum at the same
So we're
time.
mainly talking about
Walk and chew gum.
curriculum and resources. I'm just thinking, when I think about the PTO, it's a little bit different. Like, they're not governed by the district the way teachers are and the curriculum is. So when we talk about consistency across the board, are we just referring to resources and curriculum, or what other aspects are we referring to?
The PTO, in my opinion, everything it touches.
I believe
Yeah,
it should be
has
everything
to be
across the
identical.
board. I believe they should be symmetric, so all elementary schools should be equal. All middle schools across the board.
So the
So just
HSA
to
and
clarify-
PTO, they're individual, right? So some schools are gonna have more parents that are involved than others. Are you saying that they should be like all working together outside of, you see what I mean? Like, you're gonna have some people at Guth that we had 4 one year, the next year we had 14 that wanted to be involved. So like each year it's gonna be different. Are you expecting all of them to work with each other?
They could. I
They
mean,
could work
back in
together.
my
It would be
week,
nice if we
yeah,
worked
have
together.
meetings.
Together?
Yeah, not on anything specific, but it was actually really nice. We would gather at somebody's home or whatever and just bounce ideas off of one another. So that's definitely something, if you have a PTO that's smaller,
Yeah.
and maybe you feel like you want to talk to other schools, that's perfectly acceptable and good. All I'm saying is that anything that comes to our students or parents or whatever, if it's on an HSA website, that's still a Pennridge School District responsibility.
You're still
ultimately.
thinking like activity though as well? I'm just thinking big picture, like one school's gonna be able to do more activities than another. If you're offering it to one, are you saying that that's a global decision? Like we have to think about like what we're saying
I
here,
mean, well,
right?
I guess if a PTO, that might be a nice thing for you to do, where 2 schools, say Crass and Guth, hey, we want to have this activity, but we don't have enough interest, or maybe we don't have enough volunteers. Maybe.
I think it's more of a sharing of
at least for
ideas.
me, the
It's more
concern
sharing, I
more
believe,
would
because
be
sharing is
not,
caring. right?
Obviously PTOs are always going to do slightly different things. You don't do the same. But I'm thinking that doesn't need to be.
Can we go
exactly
back
the
to
same.
the mission statement? Because I am like completely, like.
We're
what is
still
our-
working on that,
We're
Melissa.
going.
Missy, we're still working on
data,
that mission
we're
statement.
going-
We
now
don't
we're
have-
talking about governing home and school associations, and like I feel like we have to have a mission statement before we're able to go off into all of these areas.
Correct.
This is
And we
very
should.
fragmented.
But wait, I just do want to say though, this isn't a foreign or new concept. PTOs, HSAs, they've always supposed to be, I can't, my words. They have always been expected to operate, within the guidelines of the school district, in line with what the school district, rules are. So that's not something new. This is just simply saying that whatever new committee comes, is formed in these different schools, that they too will follow this district guidelines the same way that PTOs and HSAs have always had to do, so that you have some consistency.
And I'd like to make an observation, just in the sense that we know that we need to gather a lot of information from a lot of different sources in order to find out what our needs and needs of the district are. And the reason for gathering that information is so that we can find out where our gaps and where our needs are, so that we can formulate plans to fix them or resolve them or overcome them, or whatever verb you want to use. That sounds to me like it is a valuable need. That's the first thing on the need list. Somebody's already identified something on the need list, right? There's that, you put your paper. What are our needs? Well, one is we have some inconsistency in the district websites. Another is based on the information we get from our surveys and data collection, and right. So that is something that is for the future that we need to capture as a, to fix issue. It's one of many that I'm sure that we're going to uncover down the road.
I'm very leery of us being like a governing body for HSAs, et cetera, because first of all, we only meet monthly. It'll be our whole agenda. Like, I don't know how they would even be able to get in front of us for their ideas in time to implement them. I don't think this is a good idea.
I honestly I'm a little lost too at, we didn't establish that part of our mission is doing needs assessments for the school district. So I just want to understand what our mission is. I'm feeling like we're going into a couple areas without even establishing what our mission is.
Yes, the agenda was aggressive. I did put a couple items on you so we can, multitask and throw out ideas. Yes, this was brainstorming. That was my idea. I'm an IT guy. I multitask all day long. So if the server's down or there's an infrastructure, something down, yes. So it's kind of how my brain works. So yes, I was thinking we could collect a lot of data, gather all the information, have a good conversation. Sometimes we got off in the weeds, and I apologize. But I didn't talk a lot, so I don't think you can blame a lot of that on me.
I guess I'm just confused what we're trying to do with this. Like, I'm not even sure what content you're talking about.
Could I maybe
Please, Nick.
Yeah, maybe going forward, the agenda item, we just have school buildings, classrooms, and district-owned websites. I had no idea what we'd be talking about. Ms. Herring, you seem to know, you had a comment, but maybe you could add an example about what you were talking about.
Okay.
That may help us frame it.
Sure. There's a great disparity right now, and there was, in the information that was available to parents through the HSA, which was on the Seiler Elementary School website, as compared to what was available to Bedminster, for example, The content was wildly different, Both have a housing on our district domain, meaning in our own district web, and we have a responsibility for that, And part of that came up previously even, that there was content on some of these pages that really was not aligned with what, from top administration on down, believed fit as age appropriate.
Well, that was for parents.
Right, but that's on a public site. The students can access that site, and it's then authorized to be there through that use, which it really wasn't, because it wasn't content that was age appropriate.
It wasn't content that was age appropriate? Or is that an opinion, or is that a fact?
No, that's what Dr. Bolton said.
He said the content was not age appropriate?
Yes, he did.
So that's his opinion, or I'm just curious?
Yes.
Okay.
And as the head administrator, I'm going to go with his opinion as what he sees an application of being appropriate for.
But it was for the parents? It was like for the parents?
So Mr. Kraus, when he had, first identified the committee in that meeting.
You have to ensure that the content on a domain is appropriate.
I know you were talking, but we can't hear you.
For parents, if it's said under parents, though, I feel like it's aligned under the for parents. and that's appropriate for parents, like.
But it's on the district's website.
And I think the website is one source of communication for parents, so we have to be mindful of the fact that, you know, the district needs to communicate in different ways to parents. I don't know what the content was, so I can't obviously speak to that.
I think that would be helpful to,
We're gonna
even
collect
though
the
it's
data.
something for the
It's that
parents,
content.
it was content that parents were encouraged to use for their elementary school children. And that's where the question of whether it's acceptable,
No,
appropriate.
they weren't encouraged, that it was accessible.
It was
to
a
them.
resource.
It was a resource.
Okay, so let's just put it this
Yes,
way.
they were not
If you're a young
encouraged.
parent and you have your first child and your first child is in first or second grade, and this resource is put up on the HSA website for your elementary school, what might you assume about that resource? Oh, this is a resource that my school district has deemed appropriate for me to give to my child, to use with my child. So it is something that could eventually get to our students, and you do always have to consider, what's the purpose of this thing I'm putting on this website? What do I expect parents to do with it? Is it appropriate, age appropriate for parents to share it? You know, in terms of what our school district, you know, what our, I use the word guidelines again, but you know, so Dr. Bolton determined it was not appropriate for elementary age, whether it be, you know, if a parent has a student of that age and they want that content, or they feel like they could go to an outside community resource maybe to get it, but it wasn't for us to be providing that for use with first and second grade children. And that was the reason why it was pulled off.
But it was under the parents, so that the parents could make that judgment, correct?
Well, but it's still something, again, if you're, especially for parents,
So we need
my
to-
youngest child is in 10th grade. So I have a different, I'm a little bit more, I don't know, maybe I'm more savvy, maybe I'm not, but when you had your first child and the child was that age, maybe you are looking to other places to kind of guide you a little bit on what you should be presenting to your child and when. And if it's not something that we deem age appropriate for first grade in our classrooms, I'm not comfortable.
But that's-
you know, that's why it got pulled off.
Like, I just think we need to be very careful about when we say, like, we deem and these general statements, because I think there's piece of information said with conviction, but doesn't make them truth. Okay? So, we deem
As far as
is
the school
who?
district's concerned, what goes onto our websites
Right.
and an HSA website is what we are putting out there. So we are endorsing it. And whether you want to disagree with what a child should be presented in first or second grade, you can personally have a disagreement with that as a parent. But we are responsible for, now it's only 6,000, maybe 6,600 students. But my point is that you're going to make different decisions, and the school district, it's not our, I don't know whatever the phrase is that you just used, that it doesn't make it true. For our purposes, it does make it true.
So
If we
Pennridge School
determine that
District
that
said
something
this
that
is
we're
not,
going to put-
there was a, Pennridge School District had a statement saying this is not appropriate content
Dr. Bolton said that exactly.
Is that a board meeting?
for children.
For first and second grade or elementary.
But it
age
was
children.
on the parent thing, so it was the parent's choice whether or not they're comfortable with sharing that information with their child or not.
But it's not for the
I'm trying to reel us
public,
back
we
in,
deemed it
because I am-
inappropriate for the public school.
So I get it. So we're again going back to I think great dialogue. I'm trying to bring us home. I'm trying to get home.
Yeah, you need to go.
There's public comment.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, I know that's going to be on. That's why I want to get us there. So the question, I guess, the thing, what I'm hearing is that, and again, I'm new to the home and school and PTO because I understand there's two different types, and I guess the building principal sits on it. I guess having an understanding of what is Pennridge domain, meaning Pennridge owns it. What's kind of, I'll call it Pennridge adjacent, right? If it's a website that kind of, you can get to it, but it's not owned by like we need to help us understand the rules.
Correct.
Because, but again, that's getting into South. I don't want to get us into South because we don't have enough. We don't have a mission statement, and we don't have enough meat here on the agenda to get into South. right? So I want to get us out of solve and get us back to, I guess, where you were going, which is high level. Let's walk through this agenda and then kind of maybe take some next steps. I think next steps here, repository of content on these sites per building.
Yes.
Right, per building. If the HSAs are under that umbrella or if they're umbrella adjacent, right, we need to understand that. And I think we need to have that, because right now we need to understand what our guardrails are, what our guidance should be, and what we have. We need to know the facts. We need to know the what. And right now I don't think we have enough what. I think we have a lot of opinion. We have a lot of, I'll call it examples, but I don't, all these are, and again, I'm not dismissing anyone's experience, but we have a lot of, but we're going into solve. And I don't want us to go into solve tonight because we're not ready to solve.
We don't have a mission statement.
Exactly.
I agree. Anybody else? I'm sorry, I left you out there.
So when Mr. Kraus had first made the announcement about this committee, that was one of the things that he identified would be going through this committee. So, but to your point, then it should be part of the mission statement if that's part of what we're doing, right? So it needs to be included in there. I think we have 18 different principals in the district, and so I think the concern is that what's acceptable to one may not be acceptable to another one, and there needs to be consistency throughout the district. And this debate that we're having on stage right now is really the reason it was put into this committee, so that it would be transparent and so that it would be various different perspectives to really vet everything and make sure that all different perspectives had a seat at the table to be able to go through this, and so that the public was well aware of what things are are being suggested to be included in those areas. So, those debates are the debates we're likely going to be having in the future when those things come, when those types of items come through this committee for approval. And so that's kind of the point of bringing it through this committee. So I think, again, that would be part of putting that in that mission statement that you talked about. So I think we covered that one, and I think we're at public comment, Dave. I think we're at public comment.
Let's do it. We're in public comment, I believe, right? I think that's a great idea. And moving forward with public comment, actually, I guess we probably should throw out there, any new business? I hate to say it, any new business? No new business. Something that's always on the agenda is when I'm working on other committees, so I apologize. And back to public comment. Do we happen to have any other public comments that showed up on that paper out in the back there? Am I speaking? I broke it. Okay.
Oh, under new business, can we have some sort of different audio arrangement next time?
What did she say?
Different audio. Different audio arrangement next time?
Ironic.
Under new business?
So Ms. Herring's asking for a different audio arrangement. I'm sure that we'll figure that out. Everybody online could probably hear it just fine, and all the sidebar conversations, they can hear those. I heard them, and I don't know. Okay, public comment. I'm going to go back to the order that we left them in. I guess everybody can hear me then. Lauren Foster? Is it Laura or Lauren? Laura. Thank you. One second, I'll grab my time. As you're ready.
So, hi, I'm Laura Foster. I'm East Rock Hill Township. I have 3 children in the district, and I have a master's degree in social policy and administration. What we teach our children, how we teach our children, is primarily through the use of language. The words we use matter. If a person is using an incorrect word, the message delivered is not accurate. Incorrect word choice leads to misunderstanding amongst the audience. It sometimes makes a situation awkward or unclear. In light of the omission of the words diversity, equality, and inclusion in this DEI ad hoc committee name, I think it's important to start what these words mean from the roots in academia. So I'm going to start talking again about vernacular. It is widely accepted among the academics and social policy and administration that diversity is understanding that each individual is unique and recognizing can be along the dimensions of race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, age, physical abilities, religious beliefs, political beliefs, or other ideologies. Diversity is talking about the differences between people and taking a positive value on those differences. Equality is about ensuring everybody has an equal opportunity and is not treated differently or discriminated against because of these characteristics. Inclusion means creating an environment where everyone feels welcome and valued. An inclusive environment can be created only once we are more aware of our unconscious biases and have learned how to manage them. I have a couple of suggestions for the committee. I think it's important for everyone on the committee to first take a stance and take a look at their own implicit bias. This is not a new concept. This is not a new training. Most corporations do this with their employees. Most people here probably have done an implicit bias training. I think that you should have a professional come in and implement this training for everyone sitting up here so that you can all take a stance and have an understanding of where you're coming from as you're working to further the values of the committee. Also, you should know that the students in the high school are already working on diversity and inclusion. There's kids hear the racial slurs that are happening, they hear the homophobic slurs, and they're doing stuff about it already. So we need to take a look at what's happening in our schools with the kids that are already invested in this and already working towards making improvement with the problems that they see. You know, there's kind of talk about, making sure that there's equal opportunity and everything, and that's a huge part of DEI, but another part is stopping racism in our schools. And we cannot deny that there is racism in our schools. I hear it from my children of words that are said coming from the hallways, coming to their friends because of their sexual orientation, because of their race. So that is an issue that hasn't really been talked about here, but it's an issue that is a part of DEI. And I really appreciate everyone taking their time to be a part of this. I think it's a great opportunity, and I look forward to attending more meetings. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I bring you greetings from the NAACP Bucks County. My name is Karen Downer, and I am the branch president. The original Pennridge DEI committee worked hard to address the Pennridge school climate to help ensure sensitivity and inclusivity of all students. With the formation of this committee, there is a concern about the current Eurocentric focused education and the need for a more diverse curriculum and more diversity of teaching staff. How can this committee broaden the perspective of the Pennridge students to prepare them for the world outside of Percy? How will this committee oversee the implementation of anti-racism into the district's curriculum? And how will you hold yourselves accountable for producing real results that all members of this community can be proud of, including people of color? The Bucks County NAACP has questioned the knowledge and experience of this committee to develop a diverse plan that could equal the one Pennridge developed through educational professionals. We are encouraged by the apparent diversity of this new committee, and we hope you will all make sure that you lend your voices. And so we want you to know that we will be watching and following your progress. I do want to just make one suggestion, listening to you and talking about the mission statement, because the mission statement is so important. You may want to just think about creating a scope so that you know what your boundaries are, and then plug your mission statement in from the scope. So just a comment. I thank you very much.
Dave Badillion, Percy Borough. I apologize, I'm not going to be as eloquent or consistent. I was just taking a lot of notes throughout this, but I just want to first start off and kind of what I wanted to say at the beginning, but again, it wasn't specifically pertaining to an agenda item, but I just wanted to say thank you to all of you for committing to being on this committee, to spending the time. Obviously, these are challenging discussions, just from an organizational standpoint, let alone the content. Obviously, there's lots of different feelings and viewpoints in the community, and it's a tough job. I mean, being up here, having these discussions live. So I just want to say I appreciate it, because I know you're going to hear different feedback. So I hope you overall hear from this community that we really appreciate you guys taking this sacrifice. So a couple things I wanted to point out. SEL was kind of talked about a couple times, and I think from a parent community standpoint, I don't know if the community and parents really understood how much SEL and what exactly it meant was really involved in the schools. And there seems to be in this baseline assumption that SEL is needed and is already working. And I think we've already heard a little bit that it's been going on for a while, and I've been looking at the PACE surveys, and I don't know if the trend is showing that it's working or not. So I would actually ask the committee to look into, as part of the data analysis, is to see, is SEL even working? We're kind of starting with a baseline assumption that SEL is the appropriate way to be educating a child. And I think that's also part of the major concern from a parent perspective is, regardless of what issues children have, there are still boundaries. You're still an educational institution. And so while you may want to do something, it doesn't, because it even may result in something positive for a child, you still have to look at, is it within the bounds and the role within my authority and within my responsibilities, and what's within the parents and the community. Because that's what I think is great about this committee, and what I think is different about this committee is that it's not just recognizing that the school has responsibility, it's recognizing that the community has responsibilities, families have responsibilities, but please don't think that the school is responsible for every aspect of the child. And I think that's where the school has started to get into some trouble, is assuming that responsibility. And I think that's where you're starting to see some of the tension with parents, is that there is a line. And so while there may be things that you want to address, it doesn't necessarily mean it's within the bounds of academics. And that's also, I want to say academics, I didn't hear a lot about academics, which is interesting to me, because that's primarily the responsibility of this institution, is academics. And so while, yes, we want children to feel accepted and to feel valued, at the same time, you're an educational institution. So it was just interesting that I didn't hear that, and so I hope maybe there's some more focus on that. Second, I think there's been a change from respecting individuals regardless of their differences and moving towards having to respect because of all their individual differences, which is what's creating a hyper-focus on the differences. And it's not necessarily that we don't want to learn differences, but I think that, to me, there's different ways to respect somebody, and I think that that's a change that we've seen that maybe needs to get looked at. So, but again, overall, thank you so much. It's been actually very helpful as a community to hear this discussion, and I think it's needed, so thank you.
My name is Paul Daniels. I live in Franconia Township. I'm a Pennridger through and through. I retired from teaching in Pennridge in 2014, and I continue to work as a volunteer in the district as an accompanist for the choirs at Pennridge North and Pennridge Central Middle Schools. I was a student in the Pennridge district from 1968 through 1975. I was a teacher in the district from 1986 through 2014. I rarely felt included. I rarely felt safe. But the thing is, I never thought that it was the school's responsibility. The school cannot take ownership for my psychological state at any particular moment. When I was a kid, I didn't expect my teachers to celebrate me. I expected them to teach me. And that's all I expected them to do. I had parents, I had church members, I had other people who were there to provide the emotional and the spiritual support that I needed to cope with the vicissitudes of life. the topic of diversity. Diversity is an extraordinary blessing. And what it does is it makes us interesting, and it makes it possible for us to fulfill our unique contributions to society. We'd be a really, really sad place if we were all exactly the same. And so diversity is very important, but when kids are in school, their primary focus should be the task at hand, which is, what am I trying to learn? Now, a student may say, but I'm white, I'm black, I'm Latino, I'm Asian, I'm gay, And the teacher should say, well, yes, indeed you are, but that's not why you're here. And don't let those factors over which you have no control distract you from getting the education you need to fulfill your destiny. When you're here, you're basically two things. You're green and you're white. Second topic, students tend to work together best when they feel as though they have things in common, as though they belong to each other. I taught 7th grade, well, 6th and 7th and 8th grade at a certain point when the 6th graders were added. My responsibility as a music teacher was to sort of introduce the kids to the culture. I taught them the Pennridge High School alma mater. I taught them the football songs. And I said to the kids, we do this because, we come from different elementary schools. We're all different from each other. But when we come in this doorway, we're on an equal footing. Here we stand as one united 'neath the green and white. Okay, we belong to each other even if we don't look as though we belong to each other. And it's called team building. I know when I was at Central, the first thing they do the first few days of school is they do activities to give these kids a feeling of belonging to each other. They didn't focus on how much they didn't have in common. They tried to build things that they did have in common. Third issue, kids really don't want to have a whole lot of time or attention focused on how they're different. When I was a little kid, I would have been mortified if there had been a whole lot of comments about my ethnicity, or it's just kids want to feel as they belong to each other. And I feel that this whole focus on the differences is going to be completely counterproductive. We're going to get exactly the opposite of what we're trying to achieve.
Kim Badillion, Percy Borough. I also just kind of jotted some notes. I don't know how fluent I'll be, but I heard some things that had to do with diversity up here. As things that were said. Diversity is power. Celebrate diversity. Accept all differences, diversity. I feel like we can't even decide or determine or agree on what the definition of diversity is. And even when we decide on what the definition is, we can't come to a common understanding of what value to place on the differences, the diversity. We have immutable characteristics, things that you can't control. How much of a value are you placing on that? We have diversity of experience, politics, thought, religion, sex, and ongoing. There were, I counted 21, I think maybe there's 22 now, but 22 people up here, and you couldn't have been more chaotic in your diversity. We saw your diversity. Diversity in mission, goals, statements, definitions, and values. I don't see here something that was valuable in diversity in this context. What one person said that I thought was interesting is, what do we have in common? What are our common sentiments? What do we agree on? We call that back here unity, and that might be important to look toward. What do we have in common that we can agree on? There's certain things we can be unified on, and that is character development. We can be unified on the value of empathy, kindness, respect, honesty. Maybe that's what we should be focusing on instead of our differences. And just briefly, definitely, Y'all need to define the problem. That's the key. Define the problem, but then decide whether it's already been addressed in the school already and just needs to be beefed up. We have an anti-bullying program. Maybe it just needs to be beefed up. But you also need to decide maybe whether the problem should be best addressed by the school, or I heard some people talk about the community. Maybe the community doesn't want your help in this venue. Perhaps maybe it should, the problems could be better addressed by churches or counselors, community-based organizations, or families. Remember that the #1 responsibility of the school is to educate the students, and I did not hear that much up here. You only have a finite amount of time to educate your students, so maybe offload some of the other development to the community who can best address it. Thank you.
Hi, Liz Deal, Sellersville Borough. Probably not popular, but I just wanted to say, because I'm slithering in my seat, I appreciate all of you guys, but I think it would be a great idea to possibly split up the talking. It seems like 1 or 2 people were dominating this entire night, and I just think that maybe they don't know what they're doing, but I think it would be nice for us to hear everybody talk and everybody kind of try at least a little bit for some equal time. You know, you don't have to comment on everything. I'm not addressing one person, but that happened a lot, and that's kind of hard on us. Diversity, we have different definitions. I don't think I have the same definition for diversity as some of the people up here, so I think we should try to figure that out. And when it comes to bullying, I mean, we keep going back to, you know, race, bullying for race, bullying for race. Yeah, that happens. Of course it happens. It's happened all through generations. It's always going to happen. I can't do anything about it. But what about bullying for obese kids? If you cared so much, why aren't you fighting for them? Why aren't our school lunches healthy? So, because a lot of kids are being bullied for obesity. In fact, I've read more than for race. So why don't we get our facts straight? Because I don't think we have the same definition. And lastly, I really, really feel very upset to hear talking about corporations for my children. I am their parent. You are not. Corporations are not. You don't have it. Corporations, you can go ahead and teach that stuff, but that's not what I want, okay? So you can't force that on us. We need every single parent in this district to have a survey done for them. That's what matters, the parents, okay? So let's do that. Every parent, a survey. What do we have to say? Thank you.
We have 5. 4. I'm sorry, 3 after Jane, excuse me.
4 times 3 is 12.
We all good?
We good? Yeah. Sorry.
Hi, everyone. Jane Kramer, Sellersville. First off, just want to appreciate everyone up here for participating in this committee. You know, it's a big task, and I do appreciate that everyone's volunteering to be part of this. I would urge the committee to consider hiring some type of facilitator or project manager. It doesn't have to, I mean, I feel it would make sense to have someone that has some expertise in diversity, but I heard someone on the stage say they might have an issue with that. So just to move this group forward, I would really strongly suggest bringing in someone to facilitate. Also, it's striking to me, you know, going to other board meetings and committee meetings that the administration doesn't participate. So I think it would be nice to bring the administration in, because I think you could answer some questions in real time instead of debating back and forth about what resources there are and what resources they aren't. If you had someone from the administration here that could answer that for you, like they do at other meetings. But you know, my daughter's in 10th grade at the high school, and I kind of feel like at the rate this group's going, she'll be hopefully graduated by college. No, I'm kidding. But you know, she'll be graduated by college before a mission statement is completed. So I would just really encourage this group to, it's a large group of people, it's unwieldy, very diverse thoughts about what the committee should do. So I would really urge bringing in someone to facilitate. Thank you, everyone.
Milo Morris?
You don't need a microphone, you just need me. William H. Devane, more commonly known as Milo Morris. I'm going to get that thing away from me before I hurt it. I am from Springfield Township, and I'm also a member of Pennridge for Educational Liberty. And I just had a set of very few comments, specifically about, I know this is your first meeting, and I just kind of wanted to talk about what I saw as some of the important points for having this committee created in the first place, and just a little bit about how you might want to shape you as an organization going forward. So just in terms of the created part, some of the issues that I think are being resolved by the existence of this committee were that you now have board level, it's funny they're at opposite ends of the table, but you actually have board level representation right now, which leads to board level accountability. You also have the opportunity as a committee to build out, whatever hierarchies that you think might be useful. I know that we talked about the building level activities and things like that. And as we're enjoying right now, you're going to be having regular public access, which is like any other board level committee in any other school district. So that's a nice thing to see, a nice change to see happening. And I know that at least one of your members had mentioned this, and there was some discussion about it, and that was standardizing practices across the district. So I think this committee actually offers the opportunity to try to make that happen as well. Looking at DEI as a framework for the school district, because I'm looking at it from like a broader district-wide type of framework. There are five areas that I've identified that I believe you can pick and choose anything I'm saying to incorporate or not. I'm not going to charge a royalty or a copyright or anything like that. But obviously curriculum, we had a lot of talk, heard a lot of talk in reference to that kind of thing. So obviously there are those elements that you would have. I'm going to use the word jurisdiction over. Also, think about how you would look at and make recommendations for extracurricular activities and how this could work in with that as well. Since I heard the buzzer go, I'm going to go through the last three really quickly. PTO was already discussed here, and policy. I heard the comprehensive plan it ends in 2022, so you're going to need to look at what that is going to look like going forward. And then the last but not least is professional development, guidelines for professional development, suggestions for professional development. So I think that can add to the effort that you all are doing going forward. Thank you. Thank you.
Lyric Phillips.
there. I'm Lyric Phillips, Hilltown Township, and there's all this talk about data this evening, and I think that it would be really important to understand that one of the huge divides in our community right now is all of this talk. There's members on the committee who have been talking about data. So the data that things are being taught in our school district, I think the word taught is a real hot button for a lot of people. I know it is for my daughter, who went to Seiler and also goes to Central and has never been taught any of the things that Joan was talking about are being taught, that we've heard in our community. Our new school board candidates were sending out letters talking about what was taught at Pennridge. I think some data to be collected could be what of the CRT and everything that everyone is so afraid of has actually been taught at Pennridge. I think that would be a very important statistic and some data to find out right now. Because I think that we're going to find out there was an English book in one class. I think there was a piece of paper at Seiler. I don't think we can keep throwing the word, I think fact is going to be very important for all of you up there. So the clarification of facts, I think, is going to be imperative to the community feeling comfortable and excited and enthusiastic that their kids are in good hands with all of you in charge of DEI. Thank you.
Brings us to the end of public comment. Actually, no, since you weren't signed up, but I appreciate it. And I think that is questions, comments.
I did. Are we allowed to clarify, but not specific towards the public comment? I mean, I think I just want to put it out there and make sure that it is noted. That we did ask what our purpose and what the mission of us forming this DEI ad hoc committee, and that was on 2 of the retreats that we had. We did ask for clarification, and we did, I believe Mr. King asked if we did have a mission, what the mission statement was, and we were tasked to go home and create what we read to you all at 6:30 when we started. So I know there's some question, we don't all have the same definition of diversity. That's accurate because we all don't live together, so we all created something on our own. And I think what Ms. Banis Clemens summed up for us was that when we come back, we would kind of hash out what everyone wrote so that we can create or come up with a unifying statement that would encompass everything that we all wrote. So that's why you're hearing different definitions of diversity. And I imagine when we come back again on December 20th, is it?
Yes.
That we would probably have one definition and one statement that makes sense for not only everyone that's sitting up here, but I imagine for the community who is looking for that as well. So I just want to make sure that everyone knows that we were not, you know, in keeping with the parameters that we were given, we were not discussing, you know, what Mr. Telesco, what were you going to write so that I can write the same thing or so that I can write opposite of him. We were just given this task on our own to do. So we're all hearing each other's statements for the first time as you all are hearing what we're reading as well. So I just want to make sure that it's clear for everyone here and everyone at home that we did not discuss a definition. We did ask for one from the last 2 retreats that we were at, but we were told that that's something that we could not do privately, that it had to be done publicly. So that is why you heard 22 different mission statements, and hopefully on the 20th you'll have one mission statement where diversity, equity, and inclusion is clearly defined for you all. So I wanted to just put that out there that, you know, we're not.
We won't have a definitive mission statement because we won't be able to deliberate over.
Well,
you know, we'll
of
have
course,
at least
but
pros and cons.
Okay.
Just clarifying. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
I just have one observation from the public comment. I've been attending board meetings for a number of years, as many of you know. I don't ever recall having anyone from the NAACP come to officially address the school board. So I'm not really sure how I should take the statement watching and following along. Because in my opinion, I'm looking for collaboration from all resources. So I really would hope that at some point the NAACP will provide us further information to the comment tonight so I understand what watching and following along means. So if we can get some collaboration, it would be great. Thank you.
I think they've been to school board meetings before. And they've written public comment also. Yeah. And I think watching and following along is pretty straightforward. Like watching and following along.
Actually, public comment is over.
Yep.
Hold on. I'm sorry. Public comment is over. Public comment is over.
Public comment is
Yeah,
over.
it's not a back and forth. Thank you.
But it's what everyone here is doing. Everyone here is watching and following along. Yeah, everyone. It's the same thing. Right? That's what everyone's
Any
doing.
comments from this side of the room? This is the choir.
I have a comment. I think there was a comment earlier that, like, in regards to the picking and choosing of our committee, and I think that we all demonstrated tonight how diverse we actually are, and that it wasn't like all one-sided. So I just wanted to point that out.
Mr. Krause actually, at the very first meeting, he said, I have such an enormous cross-section from the community, young, old, you name it. I'd just pick young, old, but you have all sorts of, parents who have students in the school district, young students, parents who have graduated students, et cetera, et cetera. So he went to some painstaking measures to make sure that there was a cross-section of community members on the committee.
Anything else before I turn my hand? We're good? Thank you, everybody. I appreciate your time tonight. Have a good night. Hang it up later.